Amoriya. I'm an activist and an artist. I've gone to school with a lot of you. I've met a lot of you through community organizing, and a lot of you have known me for quite a significant portion of my life, and you've also watched me leave a cult. I kind of want to go into a video series recounting my journey out of the cult. I was born into it, and I would kind of just like to bring some public awareness into the types of things that people have to go through as they try to exit high-control religions, and the lasting impact that it has on people who do end up wanting to leave. This is not me trying to get revenge on anyone, rather this is me taking my narrative back, as I've already lived with knowing what everyone thinks of me after leaving the cult and having that judgment kind of swirling around in my head for a couple years now. Now it's time for me to kind of share my side of the story. So I was born into the cult. So was my mom. My grandmother had just begun studying the Bible with Jehovah's Witnesses around the time I think that she was pregnant with my mom. So we had about 2 generations within the religion. My grandparents were really well known in the San Francisco area. My grandpa was an elder in the congregation, and my grandma was a regular pioneer for quite a long time. So they were very well known for being hospitable, and they were very respected for being like spiritual giants, as the religion likes to call it. And an elder is a man who's appointed by Holy Spirit, and the elder body sometimes appointed or recommended by the circuit overseer, who kind of runs elder bodies of different congregations within a circuit. The circuit refers to kind of a larger area where maybe 10 to 15 congregations make up the circuit. So each congregation has its own elder body, each circuit has its own circuit overseer, and the circuit overseer then answers to the branch. The branch is run out of New York at Bethel. The headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses is in Warwick, New York. They're a governing body. I'm not sure how many there are anymore, but around the time that I left, I think there were 9 men who consist of the governing body who decide all policy and rules that all Jehovah's Witnesses then adhere to. The elders are in charge of administering punishments, recommending brothers for higher positions of power within the congregation. They can appoint pioneers, who are people who dedicate a certain number of hours to preaching each month. Each of these are very powerful social standings, and many of them cannot be held by women. Women can pioneer though. A lot of women do make up the pioneers in each congregation. Regular pioneers preach for 70 hours a month. Auxiliary pioneers preach for 50 hours. Well, actually, that's been taken away since I left. Apparently no one has to report time anymore, so congrats to them. But that used to be the arrangement up until the pandemic. The higher social status or privileges that you have, the more important that you are, the more people think that you're righteous, that you're doing everything you're supposed to, since the elder body must have appointed you to that position for a reason. It comes with a level of respect and power, essentially, especially for men. I did forget ministerial servants. Ministerial servants, also only men. They kind of do things like walk around carrying the mic at meetings. There are question and answer parts of each meeting. Every congregation meets twice a week for about an hour and a half, not including service or preaching time, not including personal study, which is the amount of time allotted to research anything that you're interested in. You also need to prepare for the meetings. You need to prepare for the ministry. You have to be up to date on any new articles released by Bethel. You need to keep up with the broadcasting videos that come out monthly. You have to be doing your personal Bible reading. You need to be having Bible studies to be doing well in your preaching work. And publishers do need to turn in their time at the end of each month. They used to have to, but everything was marked from the number of publications you placed, the amount of hours that you engaged in the ministry in each month, how many return visits you went on. People who are interested or did show some level of interest, and you record their house and you take notes about what happened, their name, when you want to return, but eventually to study the Bible, to convert them to being one of Jehovah's Witnesses. So I was born into the cult, as I mentioned before, and I was baptized when I was 15. I was a sophomore in high school. There was another Jehovah's Witness girl who went to school with us, who we were in the same congregation, so we were pretty close for a good while. It was nice to have someone else my age who I could be friends with, because you are taught that you are not allowed to have any friends outside of the religion when you're a Jehovah's Witness. They're called bad association, and there's kind of a derogatory term used by witnesses. It might not sound derogatory to other people, but it's used like in a derogatory way, where witnesses call anyone who's not a witness a worldly person. And worldly people are like the devil, essentially. They're being used by the devil to mislead anyone who's not a Jehovah's Witness. Jehovah's Witnesses firmly believe that worldly people are not good people. They'll take advantage of you, betray you, misplace your trust. They're out to get you. You can't trust them at all. They're dangerous. They will harm you physically. It goes on. So the propaganda runs pretty deep. As a young one, which is what kind of teenagers and young adults are called in the religion. I was taught not to trust my friends at school. I was told that public school was like the devil's playground. That's where I would encounter many temptations that would try to lead me astray and take me out of the religion. I had to watch my back all the time, even when I was going to school, just trying to get an education. But I did have that one sister, as I mentioned. Later, after it came time to graduate high school and go off to college, I kind of watched everyone go off to college. It's also stated in different publications, and it's also been said by the governing body members themselves in different videos, that higher education is also from the devil, and that's where you will ultimately very likely be misled. The real reason is because you learn to critically think in college. They can't really maintain power over someone who's starting to be able to critically think for themselves. I did a semester. I felt very guilty about going. You're also kind of supposed to devote all your time, especially as a sister, if you can, to preaching and pioneering. So that's what I did. I pioneered. I was an auxiliary pioneer for a couple years. I did 50 hours a month. I couldn't work full time because I couldn't get a schedule that accommodated me needing to preach so much. I worked part-time jobs. I worked at my first elementary school. There I did meet people who were my age, who I ended up getting really close to, but we later had a really big falling out because I wasn't allowed to be close. Like, I wasn't supposed to be spending time with them at all. So there came a time where I was forced to decide if I wanted to continue the friendship with them or remain loyal to the cult. And at that time, I had just met a brother who was around my age. We ended up falling in love and we ended up dating. So I felt a lot of pressure to conform as a sister, especially if I was getting ready to get married, and I had to kind of conform even more and fall into this role of what a godly sister and a godly wife would be like. I had to cut off some of the only sources to the outside world that I had at the time. I continued dating that brother. I was really social. I had kind of created two different friend groups, one that I had met my ex in, and then one of just my group of girl best friends, and there was kind of 8 of us, or 7 of us. Yeah, I was really close to the 8 of them, and they were my world. We were each other's world. We were sisters. We were best friends. I thought I was going to get married to that brother. We had made plans of getting married and having a family. I was really happy. At this point, my twin was disfellowshipped, and I hadn't been talking to her for years because I was taught, as all Jehovah's Witnesses are taught, that it's the loving thing to do not to talk to someone who's been disfellowshipped, that you need to continue shunning people. They have to truly feel what they're missing by having left the religion so that they can realize that they need to come back. That's what I had been taught my whole life, so I believed it. I didn't talk to my own twin for years. I shunned her, and when she would reach out to me, I would sometimes even get upset. I felt like she had abandoned me and like left God, and I didn't understand what could ever be so important to leave me or to leave God. I grew to resent her for having left, and so I imagine that that's probably how my friends feel about me now. So I do want to acknowledge that there's just more to the story. That was something I didn't realize with my twin at the time, and it took me having to go through it to realize just how deeply all of this brainwashing goes. I was very close to my congregation. I was also the only practicing person in my family, so I felt truly alone in a lot of ways, and my congregation kind of played into that, made me feel like I was part of your family, especially my elder body. I was close to the Links, Mark and Narina, Stu and Brian Jong. Brian Jong was the coordinator of Body of Elders for the Foster City congregation when I was still there and when I was reproved. I was also close to Dan and Ermelinda Lunardelli, and Adrian and Annie Daly. I would have put my life on the line for them. I would have listened to anything that my elders told me to do. I respected them. I gave my life to them. Because I was an auxiliary pioneer, I spent a lot of time with the elders' wives, which also brings you a certain social status. Whether or not congregations like to admit it, Foster City has always been extremely cliquey. There was a lot of gossip, a lot of like stepping on each other to make yourself seem more righteous than other people. This was my whole life for the longest time. It was a lot to have to go through, a lot to have to keep up socially, the anxiety that came with needing to preach all the time. As an introvert, as someone with anxiety, having to answer at the meetings, having to give demonstrations, you never have time to yourself. Any free time that you have needs to go to the organization, or else you're not a good publisher. You're not a good enough servant of God. So reeling it back in, I was really close to a lot of the elders and their wives. This was my family, especially since my own family, like my blood family, was not practicing. So I was very close to my congregation. I was kind of like the daughter. Then the pandemic hit, and I became a live-in nanny at that point. So everyone was isolated from each other. We were doing meetings on Zoom, and that kind of sets the scene for all of the events leading up to me leaving. I was very happy with all of my best friends and my then boyfriend.